Hi everyone and welcome to another episode. This one is a bit different than the previous ones in that we'll be applying a lot of what we've learned in the previous videos in the model that I'm working on now, the M54 truck. This is a combination of different methods. We'll be using some paint chipping effects, we'll be doing a pin wash, some fuel stains, basically applying a lot of what we've seen, what we've learned in the previous videos. This is a rundown of what we'll be looking at in this video. First, some color modulation with 3 different shades of olive drab, some chipping to create a chipped paint effect, some more chipping to create a worn painted wood effect, basically the same thing but applied for different purposes. We'll be applying a pin wash to bring out some raised detail, and finally we'll be creating a fuel stain. So let's get started. I used the same method that I used in episode 5 to create a rust on the fuel tank and the flatbed of this truck model. And once that is done, we'll be applying some chipping medium from Vallejo, following the same ratio of 2 parts water and 1 part chipping medium. This is now applied evenly to all the parts that we intend to chip the paint on later, making sure that we cover everything in an even coat. Next, we need to apply the base coat. In this case, it is US Olive Drab, an acrylic paint. This is now spray painted onto all the parts in a very even coat, making sure we cover all the entire surface. And there we go. The fuel tank is now evenly coated with a base color. I've done the same on the flatbed, and you'll notice that I've only applied it to the front section and to the sides. A word about the paint. This is a single color paint scheme, so I always start off with a base color, in this case US Olive Drab. I then need a lighter version of that color, in this case Olive Light. This is for highlight areas, and then finally for shadow areas I use Dark Olive Drab. And you can experiment with this on your own. We'll be doing some precision airbrush work, and for that I always turn the air pressure on my compressor way down. Around about there should be fine, and make sure that you have the pressure set to the point where you can basically draw a pencil thin line. That's the sort of precision that we need. Now start by spraying the dark color on all the recessed detail, as well as the outlines of the different parts, also panels. On the flatbed I do this on the sides as well as the front section. There we go, something like that. And this is the final result. You can see we now have something similar to pre-shading that one would do on aircraft models, and we'll later enhance this with some enamel wash. The next step is to do the chipping, and for that we first moisten the applied paint coats. Apply some water with a small brush, and next take our kitchen scourer. Again, a used one works better, and now start chipping the paint, basically rubbing away the paint on all the edges and all the areas of the fuel tank that will take the most abrasion. Here you can see the result. Not too much, just enough to simulate real world wear. I've done the same on the truck body, on the flatbed. You'll see on the sides. And I've left the center section completely rusted up, and I've also chipped the paint to the side just to give it a more realistic look. These are the step sections as well as the fuel tank. They've now been glued to the chassis, and you can see we have a very realistic effect going there. The benches have a wood grain pattern molded into them, and initially I planned on an enamel wash to bring out the detail, but as with all things scale modeling, I had to change my plan. I followed the usual steps in applying a primer coat, and on top of that a base wood color. I basically mixed 3 colors together to get a realistic looking wood color, and using my airbrush I then sprayed that onto the benches. But I quickly realized that the molded detail was so shallow that it wouldn't hold any enamel wash to bring out the wood grain. And so I broke out the wood grain stencil. This one is from Artsania, a very, very nice, very detailed stencil. And I used Vallejo wood grain acrylic on this. To apply the wood grain, first place the stencil on top of the bench, making sure that you've covered the entire section of the bench. Now apply the wood grain acrylic. This can be applied directly to the airbrush, straight out of the bottle. It's very important when you spray the wood grain not to move the stencil. So I hold down the stencil with one hand and then apply the wood grain acrylic to the bench. And there you can see that's the pattern. Already have a wood pattern going there. The next step is to mask off the wooden planks. We'll be following the same methods outlined in episode 5 and applying some rust colors to the sides. That is again to simulate rusted metal. This was done with 3 colors, a light rust, a dark rust, and finally an oily steel color. When you peel the masking tape away once the parts are painted, be sure to do this very slowly so you don't peel off any of the paint underneath. And there we have the result. The wooden sides, the wooden benches have been painted, as well as a rust color done on the sides. We now use our olive drab shades again and apply a modulated paint coat to the benches. And in the same manner as we did on the rusted metal, we are going to do chipping on this bench as well. So follow all the same steps again. Moisten the brush, moisten the area of the bench where you want to chip the paint. And then using the kitchen scourer, start rubbing away the top coat of the paint. Doing this very carefully. Remember, there's no undo button for this. Once the paint is removed, it is removed. So make very sure that you approach this in a very careful and systematic manner. And there you can see the result. So this is the final result. The benches and the sides have been glued to the model. We have a very realistic flatbed for our M54 truck. Next up is the pin wash. For this I'm going to use this filter from MIG Productions. It is a filter, but it works very much like a wash, and we'll be using odorless thinner from AK to dilute this. This is applied like a regular enamel wash. It's carefully basically dropped into all the recessed detail, in this case the leaf springs, and the trick is just to let this stuff flow into all the recessed detail. Load up some of the brush and just tap the exposed screws and rivets and detail, and you'll see this working very efficiently just to bring out all the detail. The most dramatic example of this at work is on the steps, and you can see if the filter has been diluted enough, it works perfectly to bring out that detail, that textured metal. The excess can be wiped away, usually without the use of any odorless thinner. If you do find spots that are difficult to remove, just use a little bit of odorless thinner, in this case on a cotton bud, and just wipe away the excess, and you can very easily clean up the model. There we go. This is the final result. All the detail in the model is now very, very nice and visible. It's a very subtle effect, and that's the reason why I like these filters from MIG Productions for this purpose. Now on diesel vehicles, you'll usually see some fuel spillage, in this case my work vehicle, which I obviously need to wash, close to the fuel cap, and that's the next effect that we'll be creating. In this case, I'll be using a Vallejo acrylic product again. This is petrol spills, very realistic looking effect. This is basically applied with a small brush all around the fuel cap, and again, keep things like gravity in mind. Fluid will always flow downwards, and you can easily follow the path down the side of the fuel tank that spilled fuel would follow. There you go, a very realistic fuel spill effect. This also dries in a semi-gloss manner very similar to a real world fuel spill. Guys, and this is it. This is how far I am with the M54 truck. These are the products that I used. If you're curious to see the rest of the build, you can follow me on Instagram. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.